Whenever you want to create some title animations or funky infographics, you probably won't get very far without adding some text into your compositions. Text layers are extremely useful for, hey, yeah, pointing out the obvious. They're also really useful to easily create some text elements that you can then customize and animate. So without further ado, let's jump into After Effects and start dropping some text. Let's leave our racing snails behind and use a different clip for this lesson. I'm going to import a new video, and the one I'm going to select you're going to find under Course Materials Video, and it's called walterinthedisco.mp4. So let's just simply import this clip. I'm just going to drag it onto the new composition icon to, well, create a new composition. You've seen this clip before. It's the video of Walter while dancing. I've just added a bunch of disco lights and a little bit of glitter to make it look a little bit more party. Now, before we jump into creating text, at the bottom of the preview window, you'll find this drop down here. Right now, this is set to quarter. It might be on auto or full or half or third for you. And this is the actual resolution, the preview resolution that you'll see in your preview window. Right now, this is set on quarter. This means that After Effects will only render every fourth pixel in my video into this preview window. If you zoom in a little bit, you may notice this is actually pretty pixelated. So what you can do down here, you can change this preview resolution to a third. You'll notice it gets a little bit sharper, to half, to full. This is now at full resolution, or you can set it to auto, and this will automatically set the resolution to suit your preview window. So usually I like to leave this on auto. And the reason this is important is because if your preview gets really slow and laggy because you have a lot of effects and layers in your composition, you can drop this down and kind of lower the preview resolution, and After Effects will start to work a whole lot faster. So let's set this to auto for now. And let's zoom out of our preview window, and the easiest way to do that is simply to hold down the Alt key on your keyboard and press /, and it will zoom out as far as it can. Now that was plenty of a detour. Let's start creating some text. Creating text in After Effects is actually really easy. Simply come up to the toolbar, and right about in the middle you'll find this T, this horizontal type tool. Simply select it, click into the middle of your preview window, and you'll notice that your cursor has actually changed to this little text typing cursor. So let's just click into the preview window and type some text. In order to exit text mode, you can either come up into the toolbar and select the selection tool, or you can kind of click either into your project panel or down into your layer window. So just click somewhere not in your preview window and you've finished editing the text. But let's also make sure we return to the selection tool, and now we can click and select our text and move it around. Over on the right hand side, you used to see this Effects and Presets panel. Now you may have noticed that this changed over to the Character tab. Again, if you can't see this tab, make sure you come up into the main menu, and under Window you have the Character tab enabled. And in here you can change the font, the weighting, the size, and all sorts of other settings for your currently selected text element. Let's change this font to something a little bit more solid. Maybe I'll go with Impact. Yep, that looks pretty cool. And I can simply increase the size down here. You can also just grab the corners of this layer and scale it out. And again, hold down Shift if you want to scale it uniformly. Just position it down here a little bit. And over on the right hand side, you can actually change the color. Right now it's white with no outline at all. So maybe we'll change it to red. Now let's also add a little bit of a white outline to this text, just so it stands out a little bit stronger. For that, in the Character tab, over on the right hand side, you'll see the secondary, the stroke color here at the back. Right now, if I click on this, it'll be brought to the foreground. It's set to nothing. So let's click on this again and change the stroke color of our text to white. Hit OK. But we still don't see the actual outline, and that is because in our Character tab, down about the middle, you'll see the stroke size here. And right now it's set to 0 pixels. So if you drag this up, we're now adding this solid white outline to our text, and that actually doesn't look too bad. And you can change whether you want the stroke over the fill or the fill over the stroke to be displayed. And down at the bottom you have things like kerning and spacing and all sorts of other cool things that you can kind of tweak in any way you want to make the font look the way you'd like it to. And with that, you've created and customized your first text element. Now let's say you don't want horizontal text, you like your text vertical. For that, in the main menu bar under the horizontal type tool, if you click and hold, you can actually select the vertical type tool. And this works exactly the same way as the horizontal tool, except if you click and then type some text, You can now type vertical text, and again, let's return to the selection tool and bring this text over to the left side just a little bit. And you may have noticed that this text that I've typed actually has exactly the same styling and font and format as the party text that we've added before. After Effects will simply retain your font style from the character tab and apply it to any new text element that you create. Let's once again return to the horizontal type tool. Let's click somewhere into the middle and let's type more than one line. Now there's two important things to notice. For one, we're still in text edit mode, so I still have this vertical cursor here. And if you now go into the character tab and, for example, increase the font size or change the color, nothing will actually happen because I don't have any text selected. I'm literally still in edit mode. If I wanted to change any part of this text, I can actually come in here and click and select the parts of the text that I want to change. You'll notice that the character tab has once again been reverted to the style applied to the selected text. But now with this text selected, I can actually change the font size or the color and customize bits and pieces of my text in any way that I want. If I wanted to affect the entire text as a whole, I may have to go back to the selection tool, select the entire text element, and over on my character tab, you'll notice that the font size as well as the color are marked with a question mark because my text element has more than one style applied to it. However, if I now change the font over to blue, it will be applied to the entire text. If I again just wanted to change individual characters, I can come back into my horizontal text tool and just kind of click and select individual letters or individual words out of my title. And again, with that selection made, I can customize that again in any way that I want. Let's again return to the selection tool. And the last thing I want to touch on before we get to animating our text is that right now this text consists of multiple lines, and you'll notice that they're aligned to the left side of this paragraph. In order to change the alignment of your paragraph, down on the right hand bottom side of the After Effects interface, you'll find the paragraph tab. And as always, if you don't see this come up into window, make sure your paragraph is enabled. So down here on the bottom right, you'll find options to align your paragraph, and this applies to the currently selected text element. So right now I have water and the disco selected. It's left aligned now, but I can also center align it, or I can right align all of the text. And this just helps you customize the paragraph if you have more than one line. Let's delete the water in the disco text again, simply by selecting it and pressing the delete key. And let's animate our two remaining text elements to tell people that this really is a pretty fat party. What I want to do is I want this fat text to kind of drop in from the top, and let me move my timeline indicator to probably about 2 seconds. Let's reveal the position property on this text layer down here, and a text layer is just like any other layer in Adobe After Effects. It has a full transform, so it has a position, scale, and rotation, and you can reveal them either by expanding the little twirly or with the layer selected, simply press P to reveal the position. Let's enable the stopwatch icon next to the position to enable keyframing, and this is going to create a little blue diamond, so a keyframe. Let's go back to about 1.5 seconds, and let's take this text element, hold down Shift, and let's drag this text element up and off the screen. And this has created a second keyframe, and now if we scrub forward, you'll see the text drop in. Let me select both of these keyframes and press F9 to enable Bezier interpolation, so the text kind of comes in and slows down. It just looks a little bit nicer. And now at 2 seconds, just as the vertical text comes to rest, let's reveal the position property on our party text, and again enable the stopwatch icon. Then let's take the text and hold down Shift to avoid moving it up or down. Let's push this text off the left side of the screen. Let's go forward to about 2.5 seconds. And because I'm working at 24 frames per second, or well, 23.976 really, but down here in the timeline, this will kind of appear like 24 frames per second. 212 is half a second in, so that's 2.5 seconds at 24 frames per second. So at 2.5 seconds, let's grab this text element, hold on Shift again, and let's bring it back in. So the text element will slide in from the left side. This has created another keyframe. Let's select both of them, press F9 to enable Bezier interpolation. And now, if we scrub back and play this back, you have this text slide in. Now, this looks pretty nice already. However, one thing to make this look a whole lot better is to enable motion blur, so they kind of distort and blur out a little bit as they're moving into the screen. In order to do that, I need to see my layer switches, and remember, right now we're only seeing the modes, and you can either press F4 on your keyboard to toggle between the two, or at the bottom simply press toggle switches and modes. So make sure you can see all of your switches. And this one here, these little 3 circles overlaying each other, is the motion blur switch. And what I want to do is I want to enable, so tick the switch button for the fat layer as well as the party layer, and it's going to insert those icons here. And now my fat layer as well as my party layer have motion blur enabled. However, if you scrub through, you'll notice nothing is being blurred out at all. And that is because you also need to enable motion blur on the overall composition. In order to do that, at the top of your layers window, you have some switches for the composition as a whole. And again, you'll find this little icon here for motion blur. So let's make sure you tick that as well. And immediately you can see the motion blur appear on these text elements. And if you now rewind and play this back, it'll look a whole lot more natural. Now feel free to play with the transform of these text elements, move them around, scale them, and do whatever crazy things you want to do. One last thing I want to show you before we move on to the next lesson is how to use the animation presets that come inbuilt with Adobe After Effects to create all sorts of cool text effects. For that, let's delete the vertical text in our composition, and I'm also going to disable the keyframes on the position property for our party layer, so it's just right in the middle of the screen. Just position it anywhere you want. Let's rewind our composition to the very beginning. Let's come up into the Effects and Presets panel, and if you can't see it in here, it might be hidden behind some of these tabs. There it is. You may also be able to use these little pop-out windows. Obviously, you can't see it because of the screen, but just make sure you return to the Effects and Presets panel. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. And at the top, you'll find this little star animation presets. Let's pop this open. And in here, you will find a folder called text. Again, let's expand this. And in here, you will find a whole bunch of effects that you can apply to text layers. The coolest ones are animate in, and there's a whole bunch of presets in here, as well as animate out. So animate in will make your text appear, and animate out will make it disappear. To apply an animation preset to your text, let's apply an animate in first. Make sure you're at a time where you want your text to start appearing. And let's grab, for example, decoder fade in. Let's simply grab this and drag it onto the text layer. Let go. The text has now disappeared. But if you scrub through, you'll see the text appear in a really cool and interesting way. Let's go to maybe about 6 seconds. Let's collapse this animate in animation presets. Then let's use one of the animate outs. Maybe I'm going to use the encoder fade out. And again, let's just click and drag this and drop it onto our text layer. And now if we scrub forward, we'll have the text disappear. And this is a really easy way to apply all sorts of cool effects. You can actually combine these and apply all sorts of effects to your text layers. And the cool thing is that if you select your text layer and press U to reveal all of the keyframes on this text layer, you'll notice that there are now 2 range selectors applied to this text effect. Now, custom text animators and all of that is probably a bit outside of the scope of this course, but just note that they have keyframes that define the start and the end of the animation. You can move these around and adjust them in any way you want to extend the duration of some of these effects or make some of them faster. Select these keyframes, press F9 to enable Bezier interpolation and make this look a whole lot more organic. Play around with these presets, customize your text and have some fun. There's a huge amount of things that you can create with these text effects that are already available in Adobe After Effects.